welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Faith Podcast. And you guys know it's your girl Jasmine Todd, and of course, I'm the host. And today on this episode, we have Ato Boldon. I'm super excited for you guys to listen to this one. It's going to be really good. But before we get into any conversation, as always, you know we have to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Agogie. Agogie has pioneered the resistance apparel industry, creating pants that have personally taken my training to a whole new level. With 8 resistance bands built in, these pants will increase your training intensity and are guaranteed to improve your overall performance. Get faster, get stronger, and it's all as simple as putting on the pants. So once again, huge thank you and a huge shout out to our sponsor Agogie for sponsoring this episode. And get ready, guys. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome to the Crazy Faith Podcast. I'm your host, Jasmine Todd, and I have my awesome, well-known guest here, Ato Boldon, and he doesn't really need much of an intro, but I'm gonna give an intro anyways because his accolades are absolutely amazing. He is a sprinter that specialized in the 100 and 200. He was born in Trinidad and Tobago. He's a 4-time Olympian and also a 4-time Olympic medalist. Ato, your accolades. I've got this cheat sheet on the side, and I've got so many of your accolades. I'm not gonna say all of them because it's a lot, but I have to mention some of these. So Ato, in his second Olympics in 1996, he placed 3rd in the 100 and the 200. Both were behind world records at the time. He won the 200 in the World Championships in 1997 in Athens, Greece. And he won a gold medal in 1998 at the Commonwealth Games, setting a record time of 9:88. Now, we also have one of what he claims to be his favorite moment in his track career. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he was part of an extremely young team, 4x1 relay team for Trinidad and Tobago in the 2001 World Championships. And if you guys know anything about track and field, when it's a bunch of young people coming together to even medal is absolutely insane. Ato, how have you been?
I have been about as good as can be expected. The Olympics are going to happen. Everybody's back to semi-normal. So life is starting to look the way it did in, pre-2020 March.
Pre-2020. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited for the Olympics. I can't wait to see how this all turns out and how it goes as we ride this crazy roller coaster.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it has been. But hopefully, with the vaccinations and so on, although, the CDC is saying otherwise, they're saying that things are not as good as you think they are. But I remain a lot more optimistic than I was last year.
Yes, same here, man, definitely. So we're gonna get started. I want to take it back to when you were younger. So you were born in Trinidad and Tobago, and then you moved to the US when you were 14 years old. What was it like changing countries and that transition of moving?
Well, the first thing is that I had never been to the United States in the winter. I had always gone to San Jose, California, which is where I actually graduated high school in 91. But I was always in the summer. So New York was my first North American winter, and I damn near froze to death. But that was and I got pneumonia, it was bad. But the bigger shock for me was the culture shock, because I came from this really prestigious Catholic high school in Trinidad, and then I was kind of thrust into the New York City public high school system. Now, Jamaica High School in Queens is a great school, but it was very different. So first of all, I was going to school with girls. That part was great. But going to school with girls for the first time, that was cool. But apart from that, it was complete culture shock, because what we did as a norm and what they did as a norm for everything, for sports, for how class was conducted, for exams, for everything, was just completely different. So my remembrances of my first my first experiences in New York and being in a new school were just thinking, okay, this is different.
Oh man. First of all, the fact that you were in New York. I'm so sorry because I don't know how anyone does it. I would, me personally, would never, ever, ever move to somewhere like New York because I do not do cold. Um, I apologize. I'm so sorry.
New York made me tough though. I would not remove New York out of my life's equation at all because it's the New York made me tough. I had to get tough with the kids in school. I had to get tough for sports. I had to get tough for the weather. I had to get tough for the lifestyle. So I wouldn't trade those years. It was only 2 or 3 years. I wouldn't trade them for anything.
What was your favorite thing about living in New York?
My favorite thing about living in New York is how many rappers I would see. Because when you're in Queens, now mind you, at the time, 50 Cent is a little younger than I am. I'm 47. So I knew 50's crew at Andrew Jackson High School because I was at Jamaica.
Wow.
So Andrew Jackson High School and Jamaica High School are right very close to each other in Queens. I would see LL. I remember like being on a train and seeing like Flavor Flav. The people who you now know as the old rappers, they were the rappers of the day. And yeah, I mean, when you live in New York City, you feel like what happens in your backyard is what the world is following. I don't know if New York is the same way because LA has come up a lot more and it's a lot more global because of the internet. Back then, certainly with music, what was hot in New York was hot in the rest of the country and the rest of the world. So as somebody who's very into music, I think that's the thing that I remember best about those years in New York too.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I think a lot of people from New York still feel that a lot of our culture is derived from New York. From a
It's
lot of
not.
my friends that I talk to, they're very set in stone that everything's driving from New York.
Yeah.
So you had your track talents discovered while you were playing soccer at Jamaica High School. What was that like?
I never thought I'd be a track athlete, to be quite honest, because when you grow up in the Caribbean, track and field, certainly back then, this is late '80s. You aren't thinking I'm going to be a track star because the only person from the Caribbean that had won the 100 meters is a guy from my country, Hazley Crawford, who won in 1976, and the only guy that won the 200 was Donald Corey, who had won it in the same Olympics. So it's not like now where you can look at all these Caribbean athletes from Shawnee Miller-Uibo all the way down to Bolt and um, just all the athletes that we have that have done so well now from the Caribbean. Back then, it was not kind of the thing that you aspired to be. You aspired to be either good in cricket or in soccer and football. And I was never any good in cricket, so football was my thing. I was a soccer player, and I would say my athletic gifts came late because I got to New York thinking, well, I'm not going to be an athlete. I'm going to be a bookworm because I was always good academically. And then I sort of, I moved to New York at 14. I say my athletic gifts came late. 15, 16, I started to do things on the soccer field, and people were like, well, how can he just blow by people like that? And the coach saw me, and he says, "Hey, how would you like to come try for the track team?" And me with my, usually cocky stuff, I was like, "Didn't you see the 3 goals that I scored? Like, why did I come try for your team? I'm gonna start the team." He's like, "Yeah, but I saw the 4 that the goalie let in. How would you like to come do a sport where you control the outcome?" And I was like, "Go on." That was it. That was literally that was it. I played organized soccer. I played for my high school when I went to San Jose when I transferred out there the year after. But that was it. That was the end of soccer for me because I'm like, oh, I get to control the outcome. And as a control freak, that appealed to me.
And this leads great into the next question because right out the gate at 16 years old, you start running track and you were successful at running track. So, what was it like being such a successful young athlete?
I think it depends on how you define success. My first year in New York, I won the Queens County Championships because you kind of compete here in New York by county. I won the Queens County Championship in the 400 and the 200, 48-4 and 21 twos, hand time back then. But those were like my first races. And they were like, oh, 48.4 is not bad for, for somebody at 16 running his first 400. But I was only third in the state. So I think I was good enough, but not like, oh my gosh, blowing everybody away, where I kept at it. Maybe I'd have gotten complacent if I had real success early. But I had just enough success to go, oh, try a little harder. It's just your first year. Then I went out to California, got third in the state of California, which of course is a much bigger deal than being third in the state of New York. So it was like I got just enough. I was on the podiums enough where it made sense for me to keep going. And then that was 16, 17. By 18, I was in the Olympics.
You're just getting right to my questions, and I love it. So you represented Trinidad and Tobago in the 100 and 200 in the 1992 Summer Olympics. How did you deal with the pressure, if you felt any, at a young age?
I was out of the Olympics very early. One thing me and Usain have in common is that our first Olympics, his was 04, mine was 92. It was over like that. Because like him, I had run well enough to maybe get to the semifinals if I did what I did that year, or if I PR'd, get to the final. He was running that well in 2004. But like him, I went into the Olympics way too confident. Right? Because now it's like I qualified for the team. I won my Olympic 2018 back in Trinidad. And now the what would they call me at the time? It was automatic and whatever. I had all kind of nicknames, and now it's like I'm getting this attention, and it went to my head. So I went into Barcelona thinking, oh, I'm gonna.
In 200 in 1992 Summer Olympics. How did you deal with that much pressure, if you felt any, at such a young age?
I was 18 when I went to the Olympics, so I don't think I had no expectations, and nobody had any expectations for me. So I can't say that on the morning of the first run I felt any pressure. My problem was I went in there way too overconfident. Kind of like Usain Bolt in 2004, where he was running well enough to advance, but I don't know. I think he thought, sometimes when you're doing well at juniors, you think, oh, when I go for my gears, everybody disappears. Well, no, because now you're running against grown men and they have gears too. So I was out very early. I had run 10:22 that season. I should have gotten at least to the semifinals, but I went in there, kind of half-ass training, way too overconfident. And all of a sudden, boom, like that, it was over. And I was like shell-shocked. And then the same thing happened in the 200. So I saw all the sights of Barcelona because I was out. One of my broadcast colleagues calls that being a tourist. When you're out in the early rounds, they're like, "Oh yeah, go see the sights," because you don't have anything else to run. So I didn't feel any pressure going to Barcelona, but I look back at it and I go, there was a big lesson for me in that Olympics, because it showed me that running against juniors and running against seniors, completely different. And of course, I had never run against seniors before, so I hadn't really gotten a sense of just how big it was. It's like, yeah, it's the Olympics. Everybody's moms and dads are at home watching. If you're not ready, you're going to be in the back.
Oh, that is that is very true, and that's not a sight you want to be. You won your first international senior level medal, though, at the 1995 World Championships, becoming the youngest athlete to ever accomplish such a thing at the time. What was that experience like for you?
Revenge, because what that stat doesn't say is, so 92 out in the first round, 1993 was the World Championships in Stuttgart. I was also out very early. So now I'm like, wait a minute, I made two teams and I'm touristing on both of them. I go to the Commonwealth Games in 94 in Victoria, Canada, and I get fourth. But now I'm 19, starting to smell myself a little bit. And I led that race to 40, 50, 60, and then they just came and passed me. But I remember crossing the line thinking, oh, now I understand what it's like. So now I go into 1995 and those World Championships. Now I'm at UCLA. I've won the NCAAs in the 200. I think I had like one loss for the whole year. So it's a different me that goes into those World Championships in 95. So I had to be 21 at the time. And at the time, that was I was the youngest 100-meter medalist in history. That's since been surpassed, but I think Johan Blake broke it when because he was just 19. But it wasn't so much about that year, it was getting beat in 92, getting beat and being frustrated in 93, and then just being off the podium in 94. It's like you pay your dues, right? You pay your dues in 92, 93, 94, and then in 95 you create a little bit of history. That was my country's first world championship medal ever, so it was a big deal back home, and it kind of set me up well for the Olympics the next year.
Wow, that's awesome. And you mentioned UCLA. So, back to pack, I have to ask, how was your experience being a UCLA Bruin?
I loved it. I wouldn't trade my UCLA. No, listen. That's why the Latin says the Latin is alma mater. It's supposed to be something that is near and dear to your heart. You went to Oregon. That's a fantastic school. I know you wouldn't trade. You look at the whole Pac-12 and you're like, I know all these other schools. You may have enjoyed going to wherever you went to. You wouldn't trade your Oregon days for anything. Same way I feel about UCLA, and I only went there 2 years. But UCLA was where I went from a boy to a man. UCLA is where I learned how to do so many things that I continue to use to this day. I'm 48 this year. So UCLA had a very special place in my life, not just athletically, but personally as well. It's where I met my wife at the time, all of that stuff. So it was a very personal thing for me. And it was the perfect choice at that point because John Smith, who coached me there, he knew exactly what to do with me because I think he looked at me and said, I used to be this little cocky SOB. And I know how to, it's like, I think sprinters at that age with that kind of confidence, it's like a fire hose. Point it in the wrong direction, it'll kill something. Point it in the right direction, you can do great things.
That's a good analogy. I like that. And I really hope that some of these kids that listen in and the youth hear that and take that one in, because that right there, I think some people need to hear that. So you placed third at your second Olympics in the 1996, both the 100 and 200, behind the two world records at the time. What did it feel like to taste Olympic success?
The 200 is completely different to the 100 in that regard. The 200, I was in there with Michael Johnson, who ran 1932, which at the time was almost 4/10 faster than what the world record was at the start of that year. He took that event to where Usain Bolt kind of continued and got it to 19:1. I was never going to finish any better than third in that race, because second in that race was Frankie Fredericks, who ran 1968. I never ran 1968 my entire career. And in that race, I was a senior at UCLA. I had never run a 200 at a major championship before, not even the year before in 95 at the Worlds, because I'd only run the 100. So for me, third was the best I was going to get that night in the 200. The 100 was a different story. The 100, I was one of three favorites, myself, Frankie, and Donovan Bailey. There were false starts. There were 3 false starts. 1 was called against me. 2 were called against Linford Christie, who was then thrown out. And I kind of lost my shit because I was like, this race needs to be run now. Why is he still here? Why is he not leaving? Which was not my business. And I shouldn't have been concerned with it. But I was the youngest in the field. And yes, I was feeling the pressure, but I was also being petulant and impatient. And I threw my entire race plan out the window. Rushed through my drive phase, got to the lead, like, oh yeah, I got the lead now. Except Donovan was taking his time through his drive phase. And he came and got me at like 60, 65. And then I get to the line, and instead of just leaning at the line and getting the silver, I break another rule. I turn to look and see who's come to get me. And Frankie outleads me for the silver. So I was pissed. I cried all kind of tears. I couldn't, oh man, I was so pissed off that night. I was pissed off not at anybody else. I was pissed off at myself.
Yeah.
Because as somebody who prided themselves on being a technician, it's like, how could you throw away the biggest race of your life? But the truth is that a 21 years old favorite in the Olympic Games in your first Olympic final, that's what pressure does. Pressure makes you do stuff you've never done before. It makes you miss that free throw. It makes you strike out when you're on a nice hitting streak. That's what pressure does. But I think that race sort of taught me how to compete after that.
Wow. And I just have to ask, because you were running in an era where you had so many great athletes at the time. Like, you guys, makes no sense how many of them, it was so many of you guys. How was that? Like, do you ever look back and you're just like, dang, yeah, that was a fun experience. I actually got to run with other legends, including myself. Do you ever think back on that?
Um, I think every era has its stars. We had a lot of stars in my era, no doubt, people who were setting world records. And of course, my career overlapped with legends like Linford Christie, legends like Michael Johnson, legends like Jackie Joyner Kersee, legends like Maurice Green. Here's what's different, and I think that's why so many people look favorably on my generation of sprinters. We ran every single week, and I don't mean every other week. I mean, like, if you tuned in, you were watching Doha didn't exist at the time, but if you were watching Stockholm and Zurich and London and Brussels, you saw us every single week. Maybe lane 1 and lane 8 or lane 9 may be different, but every single week, the middle of that race was going to be Otto and Maurice and who, like, there was a set group of people. It's different now. Now everybody ducks each other. You see them run once a year, and maybe they'll line up against each other in the World Championship final or the Olympic final. It's a completely different time to how it was then. Now it's all about ranking bonuses and IAA, World Athletics points and all this kinds of stuff. It was a different era because we didn't make as much money. Like, my contract coming out of college, I would have been the #1 draft pick that year. I made like $150,000 a year from Reebok, and people were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he got that much money." It's like, I already have a world championship medal. I know what the money is now, and I'm telling you, it's almost 10 times that for certain people. Who are coming out maybe a year out of college or coming out of high school. So it's a different era, but I do look back very favorably on mine because I realized that the one thing that we did, which kept the fans, and it's why the stands were always packed, is that we lined up every single week and ran against each other.
Man, and that is something that I wish happened in our era, but I I can't force it to happen. I know some of us try to make it work, and we reach out, but hopefully we can get it back to those days, because I think it also is what made track and field. Because you guys were an amazing era, and you guys were freaking amazing. So your gold medal time in the 100 in the 1998 Commonwealth Games, 9:88, remains unbroken to this day. How does it feel to have that record still set over 20 years and it's still standing?
I'm as shocked as you are. There's no way, with the people who have run at the Commonwealth Games, all the Jamaicans, and like there've been, Canadians, the grass, all these people who have run at the Commonwealth Games. It's amazing that it was not, that it hasn't been broken yet. I will say this: it was probably the best race of my life. And I ran that into a headwind on a regular high school looking track. This wasn't like a Mondo surface, like the track in London for where the 2012 Olympics and the 2017 Worlds were held. Yeah. That is a lightning fast track. That's why 963 wins the 100. That track in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia was dead, and there was a slight headwind. Wow. So 988 on that track with that headwind is probably worth 83, 82 somewhere else. It was the best race of my life. So it's good that, I think my best performance has lasted this long, but I don't have a lot of records left. I have Mount Sac, that's been there since 98, and I have Kuala Lumpur, which has been there since 98. So it means that they'll turn 23 years of age this year. I don't know how they've lasted that long. Mount Sac's gonna go eventually. Kuala Lumpur, the Commonwealth Games, we'll see.
Man, it's amazing. over 20 years. Like, and there really has been so much talent, but yet that record still stands to this day. So we'll see. We'll see who could be out there and who's got the guts to break it.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to, you said that you finished, sorry, this question is just, I didn't read this all the way through. The grammar on this. Okay, you said that finishing third as a part of the Trinidad and Tobago 4x1 relay team at the 2001 World Championships is the greatest accomplishment of your career. Why does that accomplishment mean so much to you?
You have to understand that when I was competing for Trinidad and Tobago, for most of the years, it was just me. You have to think of like maybe like a Kim Collins in recent memory for St. Kitts and Nevis, where it's like he is the only person that really competes for that country. Eventually, towards the end of his career, he got help with the relay. So for me, it was just me. Whatever I got at World Championships, that's what the country got. Whatever I got at the Olympics, that's what the country got. So I was always by myself, and I ran with, of course, the best club in the world in HSI. And we'd run, like I was watching Texas Relays, and we still have the record of Texas Relays, 37 something. And I go, oh, that's right, we did run that there. But I used to have to go sit in the stands because they were all American and I was from Trinidad. So the whole relay thing started to bug me towards the end of my career. So now in 2001, here comes, I think, 16-year-old Darrell Brown, 17-year-old Mark Burns, and 19-year-old JC Harper. They're all teenagers. I'm the old man on the team at like 26 at that point. Wow. And I remember my mother saying, son, I'm going home after the 200. So what are you talking about a relay? I'm like, Mom, I'm skipping the 200. My leg doesn't feel right. I don't know if I can go around that turn. I know, but I can run that backstretch. I'm going to coach these guys up and we're getting a medal. Trinidad and Tobago had never won a 4x1 medal, Worlds or Olympics. So everybody thought I was nuts. But I was looking at the teams and I said, 3 or 4 of these teams are going to drop the stick. And literally all the ones that I said did. I think I had said like Brazil and Jamaica and somebody else. They all dropped the stick. Meanwhile, I had psyched these guys, these little teenage kids up, and they were like, yeah, we're about to win something. We gonna get this thing. We were third across the line. And then the US got DQ'd for something. And we moved up to second. Being second at the World Championships with me and 3 high school guys, that has to be the greatest accomplishment of my athletic career, because it's one thing to do it on your own. It's another thing to say, I was captain and I was coach. The coaching staff literally said, you have the team. And I was like, good, thank you, leave us alone. And I took those guys off to the side, coached them up. No, move the steps back, do this, do that, the other. And we were second in the world. That team then, so now the reason why that's such an important thing for me is because now it's legacy. I was retired by 04. Wow. 05, they get a silver at Worlds without me. 2008, they get Olympic gold. Jamaica was first across the line. They were second, and Nesta Carter had a drug DQ. Trinidad and Tobago has an Olympic gold medal in the 2008 Olympics because of what we started back then. So we put in the work, we paid our dues, kind of like the Bahamian women getting the medal in 96 and then winning the whole thing in 2000. It's the same kind of thing. We had paid our dues, and then I got to, kind of sit and watch as they won at one point. They were the most consistent team in the world because USA was dropping the stick every 5 minutes and both hadn't arrived yet. Jamaica then became the most consistent team. So that was my legacy, and it's why that is always going to be my most important thing, because it's one thing to do it for yourself, but to get 3 other guys their first medal ever and to start your country kind of on the path to being a real relay powerhouse, that's a lot more significant.
Man, and quick side note, you guys, it shows that you have such a good eye when it comes to track and field. You're very good at calling stuff. The fact that you were able to call and say, these teams are probably going to drop the baton, so we've got this chance. And why I say that is because I remember when I made the team in 2015, you told somebody, this girl has a chance of making this team in the 100 and the long jump. And that stuck with me still to this day, where I'm just like, wow, he really caught that. Like, he's
I
got a
know, I
good
know
eye.
it when I see it. I'm not right 100% of the time, Lord knows, but um, I am not afraid to say it if I see it. And most of the time when I see it, I am right. So yeah, I remember that year. I remember that year.
You've got a really good eye. Um, so we're gonna kind of go to a little setback here, where you were seriously injured in a car accident by a drunk driver in July of 2002. How did that battle affect you?
That was effectively the end of my career. I was never the same after that. I walked away. I It's funny because I wasn't supposed to be in that place at that time. I was coming from seeing my father. I had moved back to Trinidad at the time. I was training in Trinidad. And I was coming back from seeing my father, and I saw somebody walking, and they lived close to where I live, where my father lived. And I turned around to give them a ride back. So I made a trip back up to my father's neighborhood. And then on the way back home, this taxi driver driving home, drunk as a skunk, it's a 2-lane road, and he just literally just came right over and smashed me.
Wow.
That was effectively the end of my career. I walked away. I mean, Toyota was my sponsor. Thanks to Toyota. The car did its job. I walked away from the accident, but I was never the same. I had jammed my right, because it's right-hand driving in the Caribbean. I jammed my right hip, like
Oh.
back up into that hip socket. I was never the same. I spent the next 2 years being hurt all the time, just not enjoying it. I went to the World Championships in 2013. Uh, in 2003. Did not make the final. And then I went to the Olympics in 04 and did not get out of the first round. And I went, that's it, I'm done. Because there's no way I'm sticking around to be a lane filler. There's too many other things I want to do. We actually got to the finals of the relay in 2004, where we finished 7th. And that was important too, because it was the first time we had made it to the Olympic final as a country. But I knew then that after that accident, I wasn't the same, and I was not going to be the same, because my body, when I got up to top speed, something would always go wrong. I'd finish the race and be like, I'm feeling my back and my knee, and everything was wrong. So I stepped away from the sport at 30, and everybody said, oh, you'll be back. Nobody retires at 30. That's too young. I've never looked back.
That was all she wrote right there. Well, you've had quite a career as a track athlete, and then you switched hats a bit. You became a broadcaster for NBC, and how you've been covering some major events. You've covered quite a few major events, and your voice is very known. We love that you're here. It's great to have an athlete who actually knows what they're talking about broadcasting these events. What made you get into broadcasting, and how has it been for you?
The two things I said I would never do are coach and broadcast. And here I am, coaching and broadcasting.
And broadcasting.
I just thought they were too typical, like, oh yeah, the retired athlete who goes back into the broadcast booth, or the retired athlete who gets into coaching. The coaching came about because I still don't know if coaching is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But I do enjoy it. And I got into coaching because there was a need. There was a young lady, Khalifa St. Fort, whose father came and said, I want you to look at my daughter. And I looked at her and I was like, wow, she's really good. And he was like, well, her coach is not really doing right by her, so can you take over? And I was like, I could try. The broadcasting, though, to answer your question, came about because my manager at the time won me over. The only time I missed a major was the '99 World Championships. I had a hamstring injury, and they told me don't run Worlds this year. I'd run like most of the season, but I got injured just before Worlds. They said don't run. I wanted to stay at home and like drive my sports car or something. And my agent said, no, you're getting on a plane. You're coming to the World Championships here in Seville, Spain. I was like, no, I don't want to watch Maurice win. Like, I'm tired of seeing him win. He said, get your ass on a plane and come here. I will find something for you to do. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, unpack a suit. Okay, so I get on the plane. I get to Seville. You see this image over my shoulder here?
Yeah.
That image, Adidas was the sponsor of the then IAAF. It was plastered on every single structure in the entire city of Seville, and I wasn't even running. So I was just there like, oh. I mean, I'm sure they were pissed too because I mean they spent all this money, but that thing was everywhere. You could not, and it's done by a Spanish artist. Because what he did is he took pieces of the image of my leg and he made the wings. Angels are very big in Spanish culture. So I was there feeling all pissed off, like, man, I can't believe I'm here. I can't even run it. I didn't even bring my spikes. The doctor was like, do not run. It could be the end of your career. You have a tear in that hamstring. So I'm there. I'm seeing myself all over the seat, but I can't run. And the BBC, British Broadcasting, finds out that I'm in town and says, hey, he's the reigning world champion. He's not running. Would he maybe like to come on our air? Maybe we'll have him analyze the 200. And I said, okay. And I put on my suit and I went on the BBC and I felt very comfortable doing it because that's how my brain is just wired for numbers and stats and stuff anyway. So the first day I get in there, I don't know what they expected, but I was in there like, well, I think Maurice has the upper hand here because he's going to run about 10-1 off the turn. And if he holds that advantage, nobody's going to be able to run him down to the... And everybody was kind of looking at each other like, is he here to take our job? Because he don't sound like no novice. So I really had a good time. And I always have to give credit to the BBC because to give somebody who does not have any broadcast experience a chance is always a risk. Because people go on TV and stink it up.
Yeah.
So I did well, and the British public is very, there's way more into track than Americans. So the feedback from the British audience was very good. And then the next year, because I'm not an American, but I was always at the Olympic trials because my club was there and my coach was there. They said, how would you like to cover the Olympic trials in 2000 for us? So I was doing sideline reporting back to the UK there. So in 99, I got, I don't know how many hours on BBC, maybe 5 or 6. And the next year, I probably got another 5 or 6. So now my broadcast resume starts with, 10 hours of Olympic trials coverage and world championship coverage on the BBC. Well, that's the kind of thing that gets your resume noticed. So CBS gave me a shot the year after I retired in 2005. I did the NCAA's the first 4 or 5 years. And then 2 years after that, NBC came calling. I've been on NBC since 2007.
Man, that is amazing. And especially
but
because
the lesson in that is listen to your damn manager, listen to your parents, listen to your agent. Because remember, I wanted to stay at home and feel sorry for myself.
Could you imagine if you had just stayed home, you would not be where you are today? Because
may not be. I don't know. Might be. I don't know. Might be on the street. Because I don't like hard work. I mean, look at these hands. These hands ain't built to do manual labor. So we'll sprint for food.
So let's touch in on you coaching. Going from being an athlete, a very elite athlete, to coaching. What is the biggest difference on the side of now you're a coach?
I don't control anything. And I get so nervous when I'm up in those stands. I see coaches who have been doing this for a long time and I'm like, is he or she really that cool? Or are they just like better at hiding it? Because when one of my athletes has something that's big, you feel it, butterfly, whatever you call it, what is going on in your stomach. And my mother laughs at me because my mother says, now you know what it was like to sit in the Olympic stands and watch you run. Because I used to always be like, Mom, I heard you passed out in the stands. Like, what's wrong with you? And she'd be like, boy, you don't understand. The gun went off and da-da-da, and you was with it. I used to laugh at my mother. My mother laughs at me now because she goes, good. Now you know what it feels like, because coaching, when you're in the stands, you can't control anything. It's like, I can prepare you for the exam, but I can't take the exam for you. So
Yeah.
coaching, I love it because I think it allows me an avenue to express my passion for the sport. And that's what people don't get. People think I like being on TV, or they think I like stats or whatever, the history of the sport. That's really just because I love the sport. The passion, that's passion expressed as broadcasting. That's passion expressed as coaching. I couldn't do either of those things if I didn't love the sport. And that's why I can't go and do, people like, oh, you want to be like a NFL sideline reporter? I love the NFL, but I don't love it like track and field. I have 70 clients in the NFL, that from my combines prep, but I don't have the same kind of love for the NFL. I like watching it, but
Yeah.
me, like I'm happy being at a track meet, just like sitting in there and talking to track fans. It's a different level of love. It's like my ultimate passion.
What has been your favorite moment as a coach?
Favorite moment as a coach, that's easy. Watching Brianna Williams become the youngest to win the double at World Under 20s, watching her break the collegiate record and run 22:50 for a sub 23, when I told her literally that's the time that she could run that year. She had run 23:50 at the Carifta Games in a heat. And I was like, Brianna, you're trying to tell me you don't have another second in that body? I can see 22.5 in there. So when she crossed the line in at World Under 20s, it said 22:49. I went, see, I told you all 22.5, and then it corrected to 22:50, and I went, my job here is done. That's my favorite moment. And mind you, she's run 1094. She has the high school record. She's done all sorts of stuff since then. But that's my favorite moment, because to me, that's when the world had to go, oh, who is this little 16-year-old running these times? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my favorite moment.
Man, and she's definitely been doing her thing out there.
Yeah, she has been.
What has been your favorite place broadcasting? What has been your favorite meet that you've broadcasted so far?
Uh, Probably London 20. Oh, it's you know what? It's like a lean at the tape. Beijing '08, Berlin Worlds 2009, and London 2012. I think Berlin maybe gets it on the lean because both breaks both world records, 100 and 200. I predicted he was going to be the first man under 9.6 live on the air, to the point where people thought I was like, we were doctoring the footage and recording it and then doing the broadcast after that. I was pissed at the time, but I guess that's the ultimate compliment. I literally said before the race, if he doesn't beat his chest before he gets to the line, you're going to see the first 9.5 we've ever seen in human history.
Wow.
And there it is. 2009 was a phenomenal Worlds, though. Great weather, fast track, great mascot, great fans. '08, just because it was, it's both sort of emergence onto the world scene, and that 100-meter race, that 100-meter final for men is by far the most amazing thing I've ever seen with my own two eyes. But London 2012, those Olympics, I think probably had the best fans. And I think overall, with as well as the UK team did, the noise that I heard in that stadium, I haven't heard any time before, and I haven't heard any time since. So it's close. I probably get the nod to '09 Worlds, with London 2012 second and Beijing getting the bronze.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see London getting very loud because they definitely
Well,
were
when
doing
their people won 3 gold medals in one night, so they were hyped.
yeah. Like you have nothing to be but hype at that moment, because what?
Yep.
So we're gonna take it back to Trinidad and Tobago, because you had a stadium constructed in your honor in 2001 for the FIFA Under 17 World Championships.
Yeah.
How did you feel finding out that you were going to have a stadium constructed?
You know what's funny? At the time, I think you live two lives. You live your athlete life and you live your post-athlete life. And your post-athlete life is much longer. When they were constructing that stadium for at the time, the Under 17 World Cup, they were building several of them. And what they had done is, Hasty Crawford was our first Olympic gold medalist, rightfully so. He should have the first. He should have the big stadium. That's our main stadium. But then they were building these other 5 stadia, and they said, okay, we're going to name him after people who are also doing well in this generation. So I got one, and some of my friend who used to play for Manchester United soccer team got one, and then there was another guy. At the time, I was going through my career, and I was like, yeah, whatever. Now that I'm retired, every now and then, what somebody who knows me very well will be, okay, Trinidad and Tobago eliminated the United States from the last World Cup, and it was at my stadium. And I had all sorts of people who have known me since high school saying, you have a freaking stadium? How come I never knew this? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm supposed to wear a chain says Ato Boldon Stadium? Like, what?
I have a stadium.
I have a stadium. Do you? So it's very cool now. And like my daughter, who is 14 this year, discovered it the other day. She's like, Dad, I put your name in Google and the stadium came up. Where's your stadium? I'm like, it's not my stadium. It's named for me or whatever. So it's very cool because not a lot of people have that while they're alive.
Yes.
And it is cool to go and see your name, on the side of a building and on the highway sign off ramp. That's pretty cool.
Just plastered on a stadium. It's cool. No big deal. It's fine. Also, one of the other many great things that you have done, you are an opposition senator in Trinidad and Tobago Parliament representing the United Nations Congress from 2006 to 2007. What made you initially run for office and what was the experience like?
I did not enjoy the experience. When I retired in 2004, I think I looked around and I went, I know I'm not going back. And like I said, everybody told me, oh, you're going to go back and you retired too young and everybody has to come back and Jordan came back and this one came back. I'm like, I know me. When I'm done, I am done. So I had to figure out what I was going to do. And when I got my pilot's license, that occupied me for a while. And I started flying around California. I was like, okay, I'm bored of this now what? And at the time, the country was going through a transition and they were like, we would like, and mind you, I didn't go into power. It's like, I would be like a Republican now where the Democrats control everything. I was on the other side. So I was going to basically have to go in there and wait until the next election. But I got in there and people who I have a lot of respect for and people who I genuinely admire, I went in there and I went, oh, this is I can't do this. I don't like the deception. I don't like if you're in the party, you gotta toe the party line and whatever they say goes, you gotta go along with. I guess if I was a senator or a representative in the States, I'd be like AOC. Where it's like, yeah, she's a Democrat, but every now and then she says some stuff and you're like, oh, like she'll go after Pelosi. You know what I'm saying? Like I was gonna be that sort of person. So as soon as I started to kind of butt heads with the leadership of the party and I realized that I didn't agree with some of the things that we were doing, I was like, I'm out. So I think I started in 2005 and then by 2006, 2005 I was doing CBS, but I was only doing one meet a year. It was only NCAAs I was doing. I did 2005 NCs, 2006 NCs, and then ESPN hired me. So at one point I was doing CBS, NCAAs, ESPN, whatever they had, and NBC, whatever they had, including Worlds, and then the Olympics. So because I had ESPN sort of calling me, I used it as an excuse. I was like, hey guys, I would love to serve out the rest of my term, but ESPN wants me, I'm out. So it
Gotta go.
After 14 months.
Gotta get out of here. Gotta go. Bye guys.
I was out. And I never went back.
I like how you just threw in there casually. Yeah, I got my pilot's license. Like, sport. What?
That's been a passion of mine for a very long time. I grew up with my uncle, who's like my closest family member. He was a very successful vet in San Jose, California. So I grew up, as I said, going to his house every summer. And he had a plane. So I grew up with planes, with private planes around me. So now I have my pilot's license. Of course, there's there's COVID, but literally everywhere around my office is something for me to stay current with my flying. So I take my flying very seriously.
Wow.
I'm always trying to get better, but yeah, I've had my pilot's license now for 16 years. I got an '05. There are a few active track and field athletes actually that have pilot's licenses. Joe Kovacs has his, the shot put world
Joe
champion.
has one. What?
Yes, Joe has one. You know who else? Zarnell Hughes just got his because he got his and then discovered I had mine. He's like, oh my gosh, you're a pilot. I'm like, yeah, 16 years. Yeah, but there's somebody else I'm forgetting. Paul Doyle, who the agent, he also I know has a pilot's license.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I learned about Paul getting his license, and then I remember he was flying people from, and I was just like, you're that agent. Then we need you in this sport. We're so glad you're here.
Put it this way: even people who don't continue to fly, nobody ever regrets getting their pilot's license because it's such a feeling of accomplishment. You took this plane, you put it in the air, you flew it around, you landed it, you didn't kill anybody else, and you didn't kill yourself. Bravo.
No, seriously. How long did it take you to get your pilot license? Like, how was that?
It would have probably taken me a lot less time, but I remember at the time that's during like my politics time in '05. So I was going from LA to Trinidad and LA to Trinidad. So I don't know, it would have probably taken me 5 or 6 months, but it probably took the whole year that year because I wasn't home. I wasn't in LA that much to be like, religiously going to the classes.
Just casually, guys. Got a pilot license, had it for 16 years. No big deal.
I encourage everybody, if you ever get a chance, somebody says, hey, I'll give you like your first flying lesson free or whatever, go take it. Because there's always a need for pilots if you want to go all the way and be like an actual commercial pilot. But like I said, it teaches you so much about weather and geography and math and yourself. You learn a lot about yourself when you have to fly because you have to learn your boundaries, your limits. Like I said, nobody who ever gets their pilot's license, whether or not they ever fly a day after, they never regret it.
Man, what is the biggest plane that you've flown?
Biggest plane that I've flown. See, I have friends with a lot of nice jets. I can't say I've flown that. So there's a huge plane not too far from here called a Global Express. This is a plane that would like fly nonstop to the Middle East. It's huge.
Oh wow!
This plane costs like $25,000 just to fill the tanks. And because of COVID, they've been sitting there. But all of these planes, you have to start the engines up and get everything going. Planes don't sit well. It's not a car doesn't sit well. A plane really does not sit well. So they'll call me and they say, "Hey, we got to fire up the engines and we got to taxi it out or whatever." And it's like, I'm there. I go down to the airport. We do our thing. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've been in command of. But in terms of flown, probably one of my friends' big twins or a small jet.
Wow, man, I just learned something new. And you really just taught me that Joe has a whole pilot license.
Yes.
And now I'm gonna have to bug him about it and ask him questions. This is great. So I want to get into 2020. So you get to kind of see it in sides of as you were an athlete, and now you're a broadcaster, you're a spectator. How do you think 2020 is going to affect track and field, if it's going to affect track and field? And what are your thoughts on how the pandemic and track just kind of?
I actually think that, how in 2019, all of us were saying Worlds is late and the performances are going to suck because nobody can keep their fitness till October. And then statistically, 2019 Worlds in Doha ended up being the best World Championships ever in terms of performances, top to bottom. And we had to look back and go, oh yeah, we were wrong. I remember when the pandemic hit, the Olympics get postponed, no NCAAs indoors or out, and people were like, oh, everybody's gonna be out of shape. Quite the opposite. Look at the season so far. Look at the performances. People have been sitting and training and just raring to go. And we had a phenomenal collegiate season with all sorts of collegiate records in the distances. I think Mo did her thing. I mean, the long jump, right, with Tara. Um, I think we will look back on 2020 and say, you know what? It gave a lot of people a chance to train like crazy. We saw the results in 2021. And then it just kept going because for us, if you're a track athlete, right, you have Olympics this year, Worlds 2022, Worlds 2023, Olympics 2024, Worlds 2025. So all of a sudden it's like, we have never had that many
Back to
years
back
in
to
a
back to
row. It's
back.
like, you could be, if you get hot, you could be world champion 3 times and Olympic champion once in this space of time. So I don't think I think now that we're sort of on the other side of it, the Olympics are going to happen. I can tell you that. I don't think that we're going to look back and go, oh yeah, 2020 ruined everybody. I think maybe if Justin Gatlin or Shelly Ann Fraser Price or somebody who's or Allison, if they can't get back, you may say, well, the pandemic may have ruined their chances because maybe that one extra year. I mean, Gatlin is 40.
Yeah.
Maybe that one year pushed him 1 year past where he could still contend. But I don't think we're gonna look back at 2020 and say, oh yeah, 2020 ruined everything. It certainly made things challenging, but I think so far we've seen that humans are resilient, man. That's one thing you look back through history. Humans find a freaking way.
They find a way, and these times that people are producing already is definitely phenomenal. I think athletes needed some rest. So
Yeah,
I personally think that it worked in our favor, even though emotionally it probably had everybody on that roller coaster of what's going on, but we needed to sit down for a second.
and I can tell you, based on the Olympians that I've had on my show, I mean, to get on my show, you have to be either an Olympic champion or world champion. Almost everybody I talked to, certainly the black one, said 2020 didn't stress me because of the Olympics being postponed. 2020 stressed me because of all the civil unrest and what was happening to black people, and and black people getting kneeled on and killed and murdered and shot by cops. So I think the reset was more important for us up here, if not physically.
Yes, definitely agree with that. That is very valid point because I can attest to that in the very same sentiment. Now, Otto, you have accomplished so much in your lifetime so far. What is next for Otto?
You won't see it coming, and I keep the stuff that I'm doing very quiet until it's time to reveal it. I am going off in two directions now because again, 2020, there were so many things that people have been asking me to do in that have nothing to do with track and field. And I always said, nope, I'm too busy coaching. I'm too busy broadcasting. I'm too busy being an ambassador for World Athletics. And then 2020, some of those people came to me and they said, what about now? And I couldn't give them any excuse. I did those things. We planted the seeds. Now the seeds have started to come above ground. So I imagine that maybe by the fall of this year, early 2022, you will look up and you'll be like, he's doing what? Now, I'm still going to broadcast. NBC assigned me till 2026 or something like that. I'm still,
Okay, good.
I'm still going to be on air. My contract with Brianna means I'm going to coach her for as long as she wants me to be her coach. But I'm going to do other things that I think may surprise people because they're like, we didn't see that coming. But I think it's important. I think I would look back on 2020 and go, you know what? Maybe that little pause that you had was good because it made you do things that you should have maybe given more attention to before, but you could always use the excuse of, oh, I'm busy, I got this and that going on. So I think 2020 will have been a good year despite all the stuff that we went through, for me certainly.
Okay, so you guys heard that. Just be on the lookout for when Otto just starts making these announcements and we're just like, whoa, what's going on?
Yep.
He's doing this. So we will definitely be on the lookout for that. Otto, I've got the final 3 questions. They're just fun little random questions.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Okay, so the first question is, you're stranded on an island.
Mhm.
There's nobody there because you lived on an island. So just nobody there, okay? Middle of the ocean. You could take any 3 items. What 3 items are you bringing?
A raft. No, okay, all right. I'll play along. I'm sorry. You can't ask people. You can't ask people who are analytical about that, because I'm like, okay, a raft and 2 oars. No more deserted island. I'm sorry. A solar powered music player, right? Something that can stream music. So now I have my music. Some sort of internet device. I don't know. So satellite internet device. And a Bible. I got everything I need.
Yes. Come on, Otto. I think you're the first person to actually say something solar powered. So
Of course, you're an island.
Like,
I'm from an island, so I know how much sun we get. If you don't think deserted island and solar in the same, then have your brain examined, because you have all you're gonna have is sun.
All the sun. Like that is actually, honestly, I think that's the first time someone has mentioned a solar powered anything. So big shout out to you for that, because some of the stuff people have said, I was just like, so how do you plan on keeping that around? Because I don't know, but you got it.
Batteries not included.
Second question. If you could be any animal in the world that fits your personality, what animal would it be?
It had to be some kind of cat. I guess we're either talking tiger or cheetah. I would like to feel what a cheetah feels like when it is hunting prey and it gets to 70 miles an hour. There's nothing else on land that knows what that feels like. And I know people are like, oh, I'd be a lion, I'd be a tiger. They're slow. I think I'm going with cheetah.
Cheetah. I like big cats. So anyone who says big cat always wins me.
I don't know how big the cheetahs are, but yeah, cheetahs be mine.
And then the third and final question. You've been around track a long time. You've got all these event groups. Each event group kind of has their own personalities. What event group in your time has been the funniest event group?
The funniest event group, it's probably not the one you would think, because the sprinters are the most serious. The funniest event group for me are hurdlers. Men and women. You think about it. The funniest female hurdler I know, Dawn Harper Nelson. Right? On the men's side, you got everybody from Aries. It's something about jumping over those dang barriers. You have to have a sense of humor, because you're gonna fall, right? It don't always look right. So I would actually say hurdlers. I would say hurdlers.
I can definitely agree with that. They're silly. Yeah. They're a very silly group.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Thinking back on Dawn, and especially Aries. Well, Otto, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I enjoyed having you here. You were great, and just going over all your accolades, it's motivating for me. So
thank you very much
for coming on, man.
My pleasure to be here, and I wish you all the best with your podcast.
Thank you so much.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Crazy Faith podcast. Once again, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Agogie. With 8 resistance bands built in, Agogie's resistance pants have pioneered the resistance apparel industry, helping increase your training intensity and improving your overall performance. Get faster, get stronger, and it's as simple as putting on the pants. So once again, I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I can't wait for you guys to hear the next one. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and remember, maintain that crazy faith.